Well, welcome to another leadership lesson. This is number 11 that we've done. I have Tom Bussa, the 64th President of the United States Junior Chamber of Commerce, although you referenced it back then as the United States Jaycees, right?
That is correct. We could use both names, and periodically we did to make sure that the trademark stayed current.
Now, Tom, you actually took over in June 1983.
That is correct.
I joined the Jaycees in June 1983. Did you grow that month?
No, actually, I took over in July 1st of 1983. So you joined under Donnie Jones.
Was the years different back then? So
Yeah,
June.
June 30th year end.
So okay. Well, okay,
No,
Don Jones. Okay.
it's that old CPA in me, I just got to get the year ends right.
Well, you're right. I joined in June, and so I was turned in Don Jones year. So, all right. Well, okay. You joined in 1978, though, in your home chapter, and you were told it would accelerate your management skills, your leadership abilities, professional network. Did that advice ring true?
Yeah, let me maybe tell you a little story. It's always a good one. So I started with a what they call a local CPA firm in LaSalle, Peru, Illinois, Wilcoxon and Associates, and Dave Wilcoxon was the managing partner. Shortly, a while after I joined the firm, he sat down with me and he kind of had this little discussion about, over time you got to develop your networks and there's ways to do that. And he kind of walked them through and he kind of said, but I really like this for the young men in the organization. I like them to join this thing called the JCs. And they're great. You learn how to lead. You make your mistakes in front of the JCs so you don't do it in front of clients and you're involved in the community and you're going to get knowledge. And as you rise up you're going to make networking, and as you rise up and through the company here, and they rise up to their company there, they become the buyers of your services. And he liked the JCs because of the community service aspect, because he kind of looked at it that CPA firms really don't produce anything tangible. We produce trust in financial statements,
Yeah.
trust in other things, but we don't do anything tangible in the community. And he thought you being out there in the community was the most important thing that going on. And in retrospect, he was right.
Tom, you in your year as a local president, you quadrupled your membership of your local chapter. We were just talking about membership. What was your home chapter?
My home chapter was LaSalle Peru Jaycees in Illinois.
Um, so what leadership lessons did you learn early on when you quadrupled, and how big was that chapter? Okay, what did you take?
Oh God. Jeez. Now you got maybe now you're gonna make me think back. That's over 40, it's over 40 years. Getting close to no, we're getting close. We're 2 years away from 50 50 people. We were probably between 20 and 25, and so we're four plus on top of that. Um, and I have to say, that was a good point. I mean, you think back from those things, we had a lot of fun that year. We made mistakes. We learned from them. We all grew as a group. I think the most important things back there is we had fun doing what we were doing. We expanded not only the membership, we expanded the number of projects we did, and I had really taken over a couple of years after the chapter had a series of down years.
Mhm.
And there was probably a year and a half before that. They're kind of wondering if it was going to survive. And I guess sometimes being in the right place, the right time. Other times is making sure people are motivated and they have a lot of fun. I can't retrospect from 50, almost 50 years. There's nothing that really anymore that stands out, but I still have. I don't see him much anymore because I'm in California and they're in Illinois. But there were a lot of friends that I had that over the years, when I would go back to Illinois, I'd look up and we'd sit there and have lunch, have coffee, have a beverage, whatever the case may be.
Tom, when we were coming through, it was leadership training through community service. What do you think the JCs did better than any of the other groups, whether it's Rotary, Sertomas, Kiwanis? What do you think we did better?
Well, I don't really never compared it to the Kiwanis that are Lions. My father was a forever till the day he died member of the Lions Club. From that standpoint, I just always looked at they had different goals, different desires, and they probably all provide certain types of similar skills. But I think the most important thing about JC's is it gave you leadership skills and it gave you a sense of volunteerism and community accomplishment. You go back to the beginning of the organization. Why was it formed? It was formed by a group of young men, a lot of them in banking positions and other similar type positions, that the runway over life to be able to move up in the organization was very long.
Hmm.
It was very much, it might have been in the banking industry, but excuse me here. I got a phone that's going to occasionally go off. I thought it had on silent, but it wasn't. But you had people, even in the banking industry back then, it was more of a time and grade than it was an accomplishment. So you had a bunch of young men that wanted to do something that got together and said, how do I accelerate my skill set? How do I become a quicker, better leader in order to advance in business, or maybe move on to some other form of business, and as well as build a better community for me, my family, my kids, as the case may be. And they came up with this thing called JCs that you and I had a great time experiencing. But that the leadership skills you can learn in JCs by conducting projects in the community, managing the chapter, all things that you can use in other parts of your life, and in a deep sense of volunteerism. I mean, my father. Growing up, I used to watch my father. My father was nothing but a factory worker on assembly line. Uh, in my memory, at that time, he had moved on to Caterpillar, Aurora, Illinois. Him and four others drove 2 hours one way to work, drove 2 hours back after the work. And my father would come home, he'd clean up, he'd eat. And a lot of nights he had to go out to the high school Board of Education that he was a member of, or he went to the Lions Club, or he went to the Knights of Columbus, or he went in and spent time at the Boy Scouts leadership meeting. He was a Cub Scout leader for my two older brothers. He wasn't for me. By my time, he had moved on to some other things, but stayed on that board. And I grew up watching this, and I understood the concept of volunteer. And it wasn't though Bill, until I joined the JCs, that I had a full understanding of the impact volunteerism does in your community, and the fulfillment it gives you as a person. So I sit there and I'm probably very much influenced on the volunteer side by watching my father as I grew up, who did it all over the place.
Tom, in 1983, you went through 47 ballots, 31 hours. I'll tell you that my political advisor was Charlie Madsen. If he says it goes to two ballots, you lose. So I didn't have to go through that. But what did that teach you in terms of perseverance?
Well, I'll tell you, my advisor died recently. Tom Bussa, who was out of Ohio. Buzz Bezzosi, as everybody knew him. But remember, Bill, I was never supposed to be the candidate.
Hmm.
Gene Hahn, president of the U.S. Jaycees, was 2 years before. In those days, you never had it that one state could never bring anything that far that close together. Uh, but I worked hard, visited states, traveled extensively, uh, took a semi leave of absence from my job to do this. And at least they allowed me to do it. That part where I didn't work, I didn't get paid. That's what back in those days we called a semi leave, but worked hard, and then it put me in a position to be there, in a position to win, and then certain actions by myself and other candidates allowed me to actually win. I'm opposite of you, Bill. I wasn't the favorite. I was my job was to stop a first ballot and keep it locked up until until whenever it was 40 47 ballots. But hey, yeah, working hard and putting your position so that you can take the action when the opportunity arises. That's one thing I learned from that.
Yeah.
Another learn is never ever quit.
Yeah.
Okay, because as you know, the more you quit, the easier it is to quit the next time along. And another one was, it's evolved over time. I got some leadership lessons that I've developed over time and act upon. But one is that hope is not a strategy. Okay, we had a strategy to win, and we produced it. Okay, and too many times I hear people say, "Boy, I hope it goes this way," and I look at them and I say that I just kind of passing by say, "Hope's not a strategy."
That's good.
Uh,
So your theme as a national president was Jaycees, the spirit of America. We're coming up on 250. What did that mean to you then? But what does it mean to you now, going into this 250th year of our country?
you know, back then it just meant it's just simple that JCs and volunteerism were work together. Okay, leadership development through community service. So that spirit of America is that spirit of volunteerism. Uh, you know, I don't. A lot of people kind of look at the current generations and kind of bad mouth them. They got their heads in their phones. They got social media, etc. But no, I look around where I live. Volunteerism is still important. People still do it. Uh, the younger people maybe not as much, but I think that's it's more of a different generational aspect to it that I believe it will cycle back around from that particular standpoint. But I think, we're coming up on 250 years, and I just, as about a month ago, I realized that I'm not going to be in the United States during the birthday. I'm
Yeah.
actually I'm gonna be with my son at the British Grand Prix in England, so I can do something. When I had a global job, I used to have fun on the 4th of July. So all the partners that were in my practice in the UK, I'd send them a email, and I would say, "Hey, I just want to, wish you all a happy 4th of July. This is the 180th year anniversary of the from when we threw off the yoke of British imperialism." And you can probably imagine that a lot of them responded with a two word response, and all of that. But I'm going to be over. But I'm going to be over, and I'll be over, for lack of better words. 250 years ago was the mother country, as we go through there. But I believe these same ideals from 250 years ago are the same ideals that this country holds today. People look around and say it's disjointed. We're so far at polar ends, and it's not the first time the country has been at polar ends. And I think if you run it back about every 80 years or so, you'll find a big major issues that outside of individual control. You go back 160 years, and you're going to find this the polar sides were slavery and abolition. Okay, so it's uh, tough times. Where just this large melting pot gets through it.
Your year as a national president was the last year before women fully integrated into the organization. I'm in Rotary. I'm also in Kiwanis. Both organizations have females leading our respective civic clubs. How did that impact the JCs in that next year?
You know, people occasionally ask that, and I say, first off, remember now, we're 43 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, uh, the JCs of that day wanted an all male organization, not because it was sexist, not because of discrimination. It's just because of the whole historical culture. That's what they wanted. And there was also an organization, the JC Women. They were happy with an all-women organization for many of the same reasons. So, I kind of look back. Did it hurt us at the time in large metropolitan areas? Absolutely. Okay, there really no presence in New York, no presence in Washington. No, you go up and down. No major presence in Miami. There might have been in suburbs of Miami. No major presence. Chicago, Los Angeles. Los Angeles today still has a Los Angeles Junior Chamber of Commerce. They were not affiliated, and they can continue to use the name because they're one of the original organizations to that from that problem. So that hurt us. And there was 300. There was about 350,000 JCs and JC women when I left as president. And if I kind of just take a look at that little period, 2 days. So June 30th, so on July 2nd, they and we thought we were going to win this court case. The Supreme Court rules 8-0 against us that we were in violation of the Minnesota Public Accommodations Law. Okay, so it's a roundabout. It's a whole roundabout way to get at our membership policies, and it was 8-0 because Chief Justice Rehnquist excused himself because he was a former JC in Minnesota. Not quite sure how that influenced him, but I think he did. He never expounded much on his reasonings, and I think then the actions over the next month had long-term negative impact on the organization. My successor was the absolute wrong person to be the person in this environment. Okay, he was very good for a lot of different environments. This was not his environment. He didn't like to listen. He didn't like to take impact. There's a whole series of reasons for that he just was not suited from that. And myself and I do know Don Jones talked about it in this interview with him. We talked strongly in the background that the actions he was taking were wrong. That was not the way to do this. You didn't need to rush into this, and he didn't want to listen. And at the time, the organization, the chairman of the board and past chairman of the board were mainly people in the background trying to provide guidance to the president. They weren't in the forefront. But the biggest thing that I remember here back then, we made all kinds of changes. We changed a bunch of bylaws. We disbanded the JC Women and did it all in less than 30 days after the court ruling. Court ruling didn't say that.
Yeah.
Court ruling just simply said you have to admit women.
Right.
We didn't have to pass a bylaw change right away. Not at all. That part of our bylaws had already been invalidated in court. It didn't have any force anymore. The JC women were never a party to the court action. They never wanted to be disbanded and moved into the JCs. We never took the time to say, okay, what is this new organization? Again, remember, we thought we were going to win. We did 8-0. We thought it was 8-0, going to be 8-0 the other way. And this would have been the most important time to sit down and say, okay, let's take our time. Let's figure out what we need to do. Let's figure out what this new organization suddenly is going to be. How do we handle all this change? How do we tell the chapters how to do that? Even, you got chapters out there that didn't want to do it. Because they were forced to do it, their solution was they just disbanded. There was a lot of things that should have been done rather than rush to judgment that actually occurred. And I look back at there and say, I did what I was supposed to do in the background. I should have been in the forefront. And that's what I look back at that, and in a leadership, as I think about that from a leadership position today, And something I learned from that and used it after that was that leadership, it doesn't matter what you're supposed to do. Leadership changes. Leadership does not recognize tradition. Leadership adjusts. Leadership steps forward. And that was the last time I ever stayed in the back room because culturally that was required to be done.
Um, the
Sorry, a
JC,
long answer to a
no,
short
so
question.
so the JC women went away, and I was always told probably statistically less than 10 or 15% of those women ever joined the JCs.
Yeah, I don't know what the stats are, Bill. It was a low amount. They wanted their own organization. It-
Mm.
Back in '82, it was not necessarily that. Back in '82, remember, if you hear about women in business complaining about a glass ceiling, let me tell you, this glass was pretty thick in '82.
Yeah,
And the JC Women chapter, it really a lot of these people, especially as became state leaders and national leaders, it allowed them to do things and learn skills that they were being denied in the workplace.
right.
Uh, so I could see that fact if a lot of them didn't want to transfer over, I could understand it. Why would they want to transfer into what had been an all male organization to experience what the may I'm just supposing here, but to experience what they were already experiencing in the job if they're out in the workforce.
Tom, you were a global leader at Ernst Young. You helped a business unit grow from 200 million to 1.2 billion. How much of the leadership style in corporate America was shaped by your JC experience?
Most of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, uh, I learned so much in the JCs. I mean, and remember, I joined in '78 and I was national president in '83. So if you go back to the if you go back and look at the organization pre national organization, because they were an organization and they were in different communities before they formed a national organization. I think I checked it out at the time. I was like the third. I had the third least amount of experience. I was age wise, I might have been the second or third, also youngest from that standpoint. So I learned a lot. I mean, I grew up in a town. I grew up in the middle of corn country in Illinois. I grew up in a town of 1,300. It was 1,300 when I was born, 1,300 when I grew up, 1,300 when I left, about 1,300 every time I've gone back. I don't go back much anymore since my parents died um, from that standpoint. So I got this young, innocent, small town boy, and I used JCs to learn, and absorb and learn and make mistakes, and then look back and say, I better not make that one again, and do things. Massive influence in it, and it's not only leadership. I'm going to get to your question here, but it's just a lot of thoughts that pop into my mind. One is, so when I went to the University of Illinois, and my first 2 years down there, I enjoyed myself.
Congratulations, by the way. You guys had a great year.
Yeah, that's it. We did, and we just got the best news. We're going to have four of the top five starters come back. Now that Andrei Stojakovic has decided not to continue in the draft and is coming back to Illinois, so it should be an opening of top five. Top five. Now you want to talk about just moving off to a side of the question? That's it. But uh, but I enjoyed myself the first 2 years, and maybe my grades weren't quite as good as they should have been. And the last 2 years I studied like crazy, and I got right below. My grades were just right below the Big Eight were hiring. Okay, so I had eight rejection letters from the Big Eight, and it isn't until after. So I'm back at a local firm. I'm learning a lot, probably just as much, if not more, than I would have learned had I gone strictly to one of the Big Eight. But as I was leaving as president, I knew I wanted to move to California rather than go back to Illinois, and I actually answered an ad in the Wall Street Journal. And back in those days, they normally, Big Eight firms did not hire you at mid-level. They either hired you out of college or they hired you as a direct admit partner. But I got in, I sent my resume in, and a person called up, and his name is the head of the Western Region HR for Ernst Young at the time, partner Dave Christensen. And Dave had grown up in Salt Lake City office and knew a guy named Jay Smith in Salt Lake City who had become JCI world president. And so we understood the organization, brought me out, and then another person, Walter Barron, who was a vice chair at that time, who'd also known Jay. And suddenly I'm hired back into the Big Eight, where I always wanted to be to begin with. So JC's got me back that far. But I learned a lot in that globally. Okay, I always go. I learned one thing in the JCs, and I applied it for the rest of my life. You put the right people in the right positions, and then you treat them as if they're volunteers. And it's amazing what you can get out of them. You got the right people in the right place. You'll get the right strategy. You'll get the right actions. You'll do all those things. And so I get this global position, and I'm now traveling. So the young kid from the small town is now traveling. He's got a lot more experience, but is now traveling globally. Dropping down and going to tell people in France or tell people in Sweden or tell people in Australia, what they should be doing. But I learned something else in JC's. I remember my first trip abroad was to France, and the person John Correllet was the leader out of France who reported to me. Still, him and his wife Mireille, still very very good friends. That Maria and I was there for 2 days, and we sat down, and he said, "Okay, started the meeting. I turn it over to you." And I said, "Whoa, I think you misunderstood. I'm not going to talk probably till the afternoon of the second day. I need to understand things. I need to understand about your practice. I need to understand about your market. I need to understand that your regulatory issues that you're facing, and where's the strengths you got, where's the weaknesses." And I just went on about a bunch of things. And he kind of looked at me and he said, "Huh, the previous guy who helped, he just wanted to come over and tell us what the Americans are doing and leave." Okay. And then we had a great 2 day lesson. And it was towards the end to say, now that I understand more, maybe I could actually give you some good advice on how we can do better over here and how we can strengthen what we got and how can I bring resources to bear to make you more successful. And I went around the globe, and it's what it did. I became this, I was not your, for lack of a better word, typical American want to tell the rest of the world what to do. And we were very successful, but that was the same thing you had to do, as as you're running around to different states. You got to listen to what their problems are. You can't just assume you know everything. You may know a lot, but you're going to find out, and you're going to be able to do it much more successful. And of course, I was also evaluating the leaders in all these different countries. Did I have the right ones? Did I need to replace? Most of them in place were definitely the right ones, and we did good. We did good as a team. We had the right people. We used that to develop the right strategy. The strategy was the right strategy when there was a whole lot of regulatory change in the industry. I had a lot of leaders that were what I call open field runners. They could be going that way. Suddenly it's blocked. How do you make a quick pivot to your right and continue to move? And had all that in place, and we did pretty good. Grew by 1 billion in 5 years.
Yeah. Tom, I think I read this in your bio. So at the peak of your corporate success, your children said, "Hey, Dad, I want you to spend more time at home." And you stepped away from that major global role that you had. Was that one of the harder decisions that you made?
Uh, yes and no. It's really on both sides the way you look at it. Was it a hard decision? Yes. Maria and I talked a lot about it. Really tried to think it through. I'm 2 levels from the CEO, because of various circumstances. Never going to be the CEO, but I'm 2 levels from there, so I'm pretty high up in a global organization that was multi-billion dollars in revenue. At the time, we grew big by 1 billion because we knew revenue size would provide the type of recognition the practice needed. But yeah, my daughter, it started with my daughter. I was reviewing a project of hers in September, and it was like a 8.5, 11 bifold brochure, and she let me read up and all about herself and things. And then at the last page, she wouldn't let me read, and I didn't know why. And the next day, I asked her again, and she said no. And the next day, I asked her, and she let me read it. And it was her top five wishes, and number one wish was Daddy would spend more time at home.
Yeah.
So we talked all about that. Talked to my son. My son was he's 2 years older. He felt the same way, and it was a tough decision. I talked to my global boss. My global boss solution was that time I was out of working on in Northeast Ohio, where my infrastructure was. The people and we I came up with a little deal with my what I call my global center because my infrastructure and everybody's support methodology, technology, knowledge, et cetera, policies where they are. And my global boss in London said, just come over to London. You don't need to spend as much time in the U.S. right now. The practice is going strong. All of Europe is a day trip. And we thought about that really hard, and for various reasons, we didn't do it. And I gave up the job because I didn't want my grandkids to look at my kids and say, "What was Grandpa like when you're growing up?" And they would say, "I don't know. He was gone most of the time." I didn't want that. So that was the easy part. The hard part was actually getting to the easy part of the decision.
This past January, you and I spent some time together. We were invited to help counsel and advise the new national president. So my question is, what concerns do you have about leadership development in the young professionals of the day, and what gives you hope?
Well, Josh Havlin, the current president, gives me hope. Funeral organization that I know I go to 350. I'm not sure how big it was when you were president. Now it's under 10,000. Let's be kind and say it that way. Uh, that we have the right people step up that lead it back in the other direction. I think he is, and he is one of those right people, and he's going to do some good things this year. Uh, it's not so much concern. There's there's a book out there written in '92 by two college professors, demographers, called Generations, and it really talks about that there are four archetypes of generations, and that as one, like the boomers are a certain type of archetype, and I'm a boomer. I'm on towards the end of the last of the boomers. The last thing, one of the points in older age, boomers don't like to be told what to do or that they're wrong. Okay, I kind of question my whole boomer generation and the debt that we're leaving the country, and all that. But there's four different types, and as one dies off, you look at it at 80-year periods. As one dies off, the next generation is coming of age, and as they come of age, they look for a place, and they actually take a lot of the character and attributes of the generation that is dying off, because that's open, it's available to them. They got three other generations that have other attributes, and they actually went by, the study goes back to the Rose War in England. That's the generation that came and initially settled in the U.S., and they carried it forward, and it just kind of self repeats, and all of that. So I got belief that the volunteer part of the generation is coming out. So I got hope for the future rather than despair for the present. From that standpoint, there's still this desperate need for volunteerism. I see it, but I don't see it to the extent that I used to see it when I look across the communities. How much of it gets lost in social media and other things that we didn't have, but there's other things we had that my parents didn't have. And my mother always used to say the most amazing thing in her lifetime was the telephone. She was born in 1919, just died a couple of years ago at 104, and she'd still say it was the telephone. All of a sudden, you could pick up a phone and you could talk to the people that would take a month to get a letter to them and get a couple of months to get a letter back. So it's just that different way that they look at it. So I think there's a lot of great things out there, and we're going to see a lot of change in the. Young people still need leadership skills. But they get them faster now than they did. They come out of college and they ask employers, what kind of experiences am I going to get to accelerate my learning? I did that. We did that out of college. They would have said, "Gee, you're going to learn, and then you're going to move to the next level and learn, and next level." And they're trying to expand things, so they get it faster in their business, but they don't get it to what the JCs offered us. They don't get it where you can make the mistakes in a less critical environment, so to speak. So there's differences here, but if they use the tools in such a way to advance themselves for the benefit it provides everybody they come in contact to, that's the important. So if anything is where's the cultural part of this whole deal as we move forward?
Tom,
I
there's
don't
a
know.
lot of components to leadership. Lots of things that make that up. And one of the reasons that we're doing this series is because there have been dozens of JCs along the way that have influenced me. I know you've had the opportunity to see literally dozens or hundreds of people that have influenced you or you've helped nurture. If you could hone it down leadership to one quality that's mattered the most over a lifetime to you, what would that be?
One quality. No, I don't think I can. That's that. Look, knocking it down to one quality is pretty hard. Pretty hard. I would maybe there's several at a very high level that would be important. I think great leaders got to have first off got to fully understand empathy. Okay, that this cannot be, it's not their world and everybody lives in it. Okay, you got to have empathy in what you do, and you got to have a willingness to help others succeed, even if it isn't in your best interest. I think that's critical to any leader. I would say never ask anybody to do something that you haven't already done yourself, because if they do it wrong, what advice can you give them? If you haven't done it or have been unwilling to do it, to do it yourself. At these high levels, it's the key things of leadership at a high level that you're talking here, one or two or three things is to a great extent, they're actually removing yourself and looking at the things you could do to have the impact on the people around you, and so you can lift them up also.
You know, it's been 45 years, I guess, since you led the JCs. What, 40 years?
43,
43 years.
43,
You're
yeah.
still serving the organization on the foundation board and helping underwrite programs that are continuing to nurture community leaders and young professionals. What do you hope your legacy will be on this organization?
Wow. I really don't think about legacies. Uh, you know, if people think about me and it puts a smile on their face, that'd be fantastic. Okay, to tell you the truth, if they think about something, the way I help them, they think about something that happened to both of us in some interaction. Um, uh, that that is what that make it put a smile on my face. That'd be more than enough.
I'm looking at the shelf behind you. This is the hardest question of the day. Who is your favorite all-time Major League Baseball player?
Okay, those are all first off mainly St. Louis Cardinal baseballs signed back there. Okay, let's just understand, it's we're not quite the Yankees, but we have the second most world championships in Major League Baseball than anybody else. I'm conscious of Stan Musial. If I go to the Cardinals, I mean, there's too many other good players when you put it all baseball. I'm conscious of Stan Musial, but he was retiring. I was born in '54. So, you get me to Stan's years at 80, 62, 63, 63 being his last year. I'm conscious of him, but it's not the man who had 3,000 hits, and by the way, had an equal amount that were away and at home. And until Pete Rose passed him, had more hits than anybody else. My consciousnesses, of course, would be the Bob Gibson, Lou Brock days. Uh, and 64, 67, and heaven forbid, 68 World Series when Kurt Flood, one of the best defensive center fielders, broke in that seventh game and a ball went over his head. And Augie Bush, 2 years later, he still got so mad at him, traded him to Philadelphia. And guess what? You got free agency. Okay, just mad because he came in when he should have went back on a fly ball and they lost the seventh game. But the greatest baseball player I think I've seen in my lifetime is Albert Pujols. So I go back to my
Yeah.
good memories of the Albert Pujols, Adam Wainwright, and Yadi Molina. It was just fantastic. And me and my son were in Dodger Stadium when Albert hit 699 and 700 also. So
Okay, so I drug you through the rabbit hole with the JC women controversy. Let me continue to drag you. Should they lift the ban on Pete Rose?
yes, Pete Rose as a player, not Pete Rose as a manager. There's
Yeah.
no evidence that Pete Rose ever broke any rules of baseball when he was a player. And I'm telling you, you can put all. I mean, you just put it this way: he can't be in the Hall of Fame, but you still recognize his hits record. No, 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 that's typical baseball, not being able to make a decision. Either he's in or he's out. His
All-time hits
records
leader.
are all in.
Yeah.
His records are all out, or the records he has. But then these writers on how can Mariano Rivera be the first person to ever get in unanimously? You must be kidding me. We got too many writers that I think somewhat maybe never replayed the game that well. Standing at the doors of the Hall of Fame, which is a beautiful building and facility if you ever never been there. I just don't know how they do that. It's and say Pete Rose, he can't be in. Give me a break.
I agree. Hey, best baseball movie ever.
Geez. Field of Dreams.
Uh,
Uh,
Kevin can make some good ones. I also like the For the Love of the Game. I like that one too.
yes, I do love that is a great one as he's pitching that no hitter. Spoiler alert. And then you got to throw in Bull Durham. Okay, I just don't.
Oh
And
yeah.
then prior to the Yankees geez, now I'm blanking. Who played Lou Gehrig?
And Major League. I love Bob
Yeah.
Uecker. Bob Uecker's one of the funniest baseball
I,
players ever.
I remember Bob Uecker when he was the backup catcher with the Cardinals. You got it just a little bit outside.
Tom, you were my national president that first year I was a JC, but I don't know that the JC just getting started knows who his national president is. Probably doesn't even know who his state president is. But I have really, really enjoyed getting to know you through the foundation and through the other things that we're doing. Thank you for the impact you're continuing to make with the Junior Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for the time you spent today.
No problem. Thank you very much. It's been quite enjoyable, and it has taken us a while to get it together.
Yes. Have a
And
great.
I'll take the blame for that.
See you, Tom.
Okay. Goodbye.